Good morning, Generation Church. How we doing today? So glad to have you guys here. My name is Ben Pierce, lead pastor at Generation Church, and man, it's just an honor to be able to pastor such an amazing group of people, an amazing church. If you're new to the family, I just want to say welcome home. For those of you who are watching on video, online, around the world, welcome home. Can we just give it up one more time for all those that are new and our church family online? Hey, before we get into the message today, I just want to take a moment and I just want to give it up for the ushers here at Generation Church. If you're an usher, can you stand up and just wave real quick? All the ushers in white and black shirts. These guys, man, they're like pulling chairs out. They're putting chairs away. I mean, they are hustling, sweating every single weekend to make sure that you guys have a place to sit and come and worship God. And so, man, I just am so appreciative of all the people who serve on our dream team, but especially to our ushers. And I don't know if you've noticed, but the 9:30 service is getting pretty packed, and we're having to pull chairs out every weekend. And so if you're looking for a little extra space to elbow around and worship, the 11 o'clock has some room. So if you want to smooge on over to the 11, it would help us make room. Also, if you can just try to sit from the middle out, it helps the ushers not have to throw people across rows to get into the empty seats. They would appreciate that. If you're in a place in life where you want to make a difference, that team is a great team to join. And because they are literally every single weekend, they're positioning people to hear the message of Jesus Christ. And they are the people who keep this room and this atmosphere ready for the Holy Spirit to interact with you. And it's a great place to be a part of. And also, if you don't know, the Dream Team, we're renting out Bolero on June 9th. So if you're part of the Dream Team, we're going to go party and thank you. There was 3 applause there. Tough crowd. If you're not yet a part of the Dream Team and you want to be, you can come to that and get connected, and it's just a great place to find family. Yeah, we serve and we minister to people's needs and we help folks around, but it is a place where you find community and family and some of the best relationships of your life. So we'd love to have you be a part of that as well. Okay, so we're in a series called Self-Help, and I'm really glad to see that after my tirade last week on essential oils and exercise and organic eating that y'all came back. So I didn't offend too many people. But in this series on self-care, we're trying to really get to the foundation of what really cares for us most. In a lot of our world today, we're trying to care for ourselves from an outside inward perspective. But God designed you to be cared for from an inward outward perspective. And it's a paradigm shift in a lot of ways of how we think about caring for ourselves. And so much of this just brings us to the feet of Jesus, which is what we talked about last weekend. And so even though I had my tirade on essential oils at $48 an ounce, and that I told the team, the folks last weekend, that actually gives me anxiety, $48 an ounce for essential oils. But God, He actually is really into you flourishing. He's really into you caring for yourself. And even more than you caring for yourself, He's really into caring for you Himself. And that's what we're going to talk about today. If you would, turn in your Bibles, if you will. Turn your phones on, your iPads, your Androids, or this thing called paper that they cut down trees and write words on, the paper Bible. Ecclesiastes chapter 2 and verse 1. Solomon writes this, which, by the way, if you're new to church, Solomon was the wisest, richest king of antiquity. He knew everything and he tried everything, and he has a lot to say. He says this, I said to myself, come on, let's try some pleasure. Turn to your neighbor and say pleasure. Turn to your second choice and say, you're no fun. Oh, I heard awes. Man, all you mercy gifts out there. Come on, let's try pleasure. Let's look for the good things in life. But I found that this too was meaningless. Okay, we could just shut it all and go have a beer after that. Just get depressed, maybe a few. Found that this too was meaningless. So I said, laughter is silly. What good does it do to seek pleasure? After much thought, I decided to cheer myself with wine. See? And while I was still seeking wisdom, I clutched at foolishness. And in this way, I tried to experience only happiness most people find during their brief life in this world. I also tried to find meaning by building huge homes for myself and planting beautiful vineyards. I made gardens and parks, filling them with all kinds of fruit trees. I built reservoirs to collect water to irrigate my many flourishing groves. It sounds kind of like South Florida, if you ask me. I bought slaves, both men and women, and others who were born into my household. I also owned large herds and flocks. More than any of the kings who had lived in Jerusalem before me, I collected great sums of silver and gold and treasure of many kings and provinces. I hired wonderful singers, both men and women, and I had many beautiful concubines. That's an old word for wives. This is his problem. He had many wives, and how many of you guys know one is all you can handle? Come on. Oh, you're a tough crowd today. I had everything that a man could desire. I'm going to say that again. I had everything that a man could desire. So I became greater than all who lived in Jerusalem before me, and my wisdom never failed me. Anything I wanted, I would take. I denied myself no pleasure. I even found great pleasure in hard work, a reward for all of my labors. But as I looked at everything I had worked so hard to accomplish, it was all so meaningless, like chasing the wind. There was nothing really worthwhile anywhere. And I find this passage of Scripture so profound because Solomon had just about any opportunity afforded to him. He had wisdom straight from God as to how to navigate life. And he basically tried everything he could try. He tried everything that we're trying. He did everything that we are trying to attain, everything that we think will make us feel cared for. Solomon actually did. In the end of his experiment of life, found that somehow, somewhere, none of that stuff actually had meaning to it. And none of that stuff actually cared for him. None of that stuff had purpose. It was empty. But yet as a society, many of us, we continue to chase after all of that. We're chasing after the wind. We're chasing after, and I guess, it's one thing to say like, hey, all those big homes, houses, and cars, you don't need them. Until you've had them, you still think, well, I wonder what it would be like to live in that house. I wonder what it would be like to drive that car. Easy for you to say. And in some ways, because, people try to tell us their story, we don't always, believe it. It's why when your parents tell you don't touch the hot stove and you go at 3 years old, and you sear your fingerprints off, that you realize, oh yeah, there's wisdom out there ahead of me that can help me. But yet we're trying to figure this thing out. We're going to try it for ourselves, even if it does burn us. And a lot of our society's pursuit of pleasure is based on the work of psychology. Sigmund Freud actually has a pleasure principle. And a lot of what we do in life is based on just if it makes you feel good, then do it. You do you go out, whatever, just whatever it does that makes you happy, you've got to go after that with everything, and you kind of have to skip along as you say that. Just go for it. But it is based on this work, and it's a humanistic view of life and a secularistic view of life. But what we're finding is that all of that pursuit of pleasure actually doesn't produce happiness. I mean, our community is a pretty affluent community. And some of the most affluent people have the biggest holes in their heart. And if you're an affluent person, you've probably figured out that money can't buy you love. Money can't buy you happiness. Money cannot fill your soul. It's empty. But the thing I think that's interesting about Solomon is it wasn't just money. It was relationships, it was friends, it was wives, it was a career, which is another thing that in our society today, we drive for this career and we work ourselves to the bone and miss out on birthdays for our kids and vacations with our wife and all of these things that we're working toward for this career because we're trying to build something that we feel like at the end of the day is going to do it for us. And listen, I'm not against being a driven person. I'm a driven person. But if you're trying to find fulfillment in life from a career and that alone, you're going to be sadly mistaken and very empty. So I want to talk to you under the title today, Pleasure or Purpose. You know, people don't move to paradise to sacrifice. I learned that a few years after pastoring here in Florida. It's a very transient area, but man, we don't come to paradise to sacrifice, and we're coming to try to do something for our soul. But the point is that everything that Solomon tried didn't work. And if you read the end of Solomon's book, you find out that there was just one thing, and one thing alone, that actually fills that void on the inside. And it is finding purpose and meaning in God. It's the one thing. Viktor Frankl, who was actually a student of Sigmund Freud, he said this. He said, Freud was wrong. Life is not about pleasure. It's about meaning. And when we don't have meaning, we will over-medicate ourselves with pleasure. Somebody should probably put that on Instagram with a picture here. Take a photo and post that. Was that angry face? We should do another one. Okay. We over-medicate with pleasure. Often we confuse pleasure with fulfillment. Now, Viktor Frankl, he's a psychologist as well, but he is a Jewish psychologist who survived the Holocaust and was a student of Sigmund Freud. And while Freud was talking about pleasure as the pursuit of pleasure is the way to happiness, Viktor realized that no. That's not actually how God built us. Those thoughts, those humanistic thoughts are actually contrary. Sigmund Freud was against discipline and a lot of things like that are very fundamental and foundational to what shapes us as people. And Viktor found that in those camps in Auschwitz, that purpose was what got him through. And after he got out of those camps and he began to study life and humanity, he realized purpose. But as we saw with Solomon, it's not just a purpose of a career or a purpose of making money or a purpose of raising a family. The purpose for all of those things has to be rooted and grounded first and foremost in the purpose in which you were created. Like, we've got to figure that part out first. And the only place that you figure that out is in an intense relationship with your Creator, with God. See, we need meaningful work in our life. It will fix the pain in some ways, but meaningful work that is not tied to God Himself, it will leave you empty as well. In chapter 2, verse 11, Solomon would say this in Ecclesiastes, I looked at everything I had worked so hard to accomplish, and it was all so meaningless, like chasing the wind. There was nothing really worthwhile. So what do we do? I mean, I'm kind of depressed right now. I don't know about you. My career's not going to do it for me. My family's not going to do it for me. Pleasure's not going to do it for me. Wine's not going to do it for me. Building a great church is not going to do it for me. So what is going to do it for me? And what is going to do it for you? In John chapter 15, Jesus begins to talk about this relationship that is the root of the human soul that grows in the soil of the kingdom of God. And the fruit that is produced from that, the life that is lived from that. The interaction that happens in this passage of being a part of the vine, abiding in the vine. It's not just a parable that Jesus gave. It is literally, it is a foundation for life on which everything else that we do flourishes. It says this, I am the true vine. So the vine is Jesus. My Father is the vine dresser, meaning that the Creator God, the Father, He's the gardener. He's the pruner. It says every branch, which is us. Turn to your neighbor and say, you're a branch. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, He takes away. And every branch that does bear fruit, He prunes, that it may bear more fruit. If you want to write down a few thoughts today that I think will help you. The first thing that you need to know is that you find meaning when you are connected to God first. You're not going to find it necessarily in a career or solely in a career. You're not going to find it necessarily or solely in raising a family or working for a nonprofit or pastoring a church or partying or whatever it is that medicates the vacuum of purpose that exists in so many of us. You're not going to find it solely there. Where you will find meaning for life is directly from the one who created you for a specific purpose. So Jesus is the vine. If you know anything about grapevines, they have a root and it grows up, and usually it'll grow on some type of trellis, and the vine will grow up and grow out, and then off of the vine you will find little branches. And the little branches that grow off of the vine, that's where the grapes are produced. That's where the fruit happens. And Jesus says, I am the vine, meaning that I am the structure on which your life hangs, the structure on which your life builds. Jesus, as the vine, is the one that supplies to you the nutrients and the water and the sustenance that you need for life, the direction for life. It is from the vine that everything flows into the branches. And when things flow from the vine, from the roots through the vine into the branches, then purpose is had. Meaning is found. Flourishment happens. As a matter of fact, the cluster of grapes is so determined by what the vine is doing. Like the cluster of grapes is large or small based on the resources that come from the vine. And then as Jesus starts to unpack this parable, he says, and then the Father is the pruner, the one who comes and clips away the things that are leading us in wrong directions. As those branches begin to vine out and they're finding their path. We all have to have someone in our lives that knows where the destination is supposed to be, that is clipping us in the right direction, to head us in the right place. Our fulfillment in life and our purpose in life has to come first and foremost from the one that created us. When he says this, that every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. The first time I read that years ago, I was like, man, he is harsh. Savage Jesus. If you don't bear fruit, he takes away. But as I studied this out for my own life personally, and I looked up some of these words in the original Greek language, this word takes away in the Greek, it literally means to lift up. Like my first thought of this was like, if you don't do something for God, he's going to clip you. I was like, dang. But literally what he's saying is, when your life gets off track, he takes you away and he lifts you up. And he places you back on the right path. And he places you back on the trellis. And he puts you back on the structure that you're supposed to be on, the direction that you're supposed to be heading. And when you find in your life that things aren't happening the way that you want them to be, and life is tumultuous and falling apart, and you're trying to medicate that lack of purpose with pleasure, what God is trying to do, he's trying to get your grapes up off the ground. He's trying to lift the fruit of your life up off of the place where the ants and the bugs and the pests and the animals foraging through the vineyard cannot eat the fruit of your life, the produce of your efforts. And when you are connected with God in this way, you find that at every place that you start to droop, instead of going and getting a massage, let God lift you up. Instead of going and getting one of those little spa things that emits that little haze of $48 oil, let God lift you up. You know why I make jokes about it? Because we have them in all kinds of rooms everywhere. Before you ever do fruit, you must learn to be a part of the vine. This is an important part. I need you to really get this and hear this. Before you can ever do something great with your life and produce something great with your life, even though you anatomically can create kids, before you can create a legacy, you have to first learn to be a part of the vine. Otherwise, you're just procreating another being on the planet. But if you want to bring another person into the planet and actually do something that changes the world, that has value and has meaning and has purpose in it, then that act of procreation has to first come out of a relationship with God, being a part of the vine. You have to, before you can ever make a great career or raise a great family or pastor a great church, it has to come from this place of being highly connected to the source. Highly connected to the vine. Your success in life is only as sustainable as your source. Let me say that again. Your success in life is only as sustainable as your source. So if your source is an economy, guess what can happen to that economy? 2008 can happen. If your source is some type of pleasure in this life, eventually you'll drink yourself to death or overdose on a drug or be strung out to no end and find that it didn't really do it for you. Your success is dependent on your source. When your source is God. So how do you get to that place of source? Well, I mean, it has to happen first and foremost in a personal relationship with God. Not a religion, a personal relationship with God. And how do you develop a personal relationship with God? Well, it takes time. It takes intentionality. It takes discipline. You know, if we spend as much discipline spiritually as we do physically, we would all be levitating, raising people from the dead. You know what I'm saying? You just levitate out of bed in the morning spiritually. Turn the coffee maker on without having to go in the kitchen. Now, I'm making jokes, but really, what if we put as much emphasis spiritually on our lives and our relationship with the sources we do with the other parts of life? Your success is only as sustainable as your source. Verse 2, he says this, every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes it that it may bear more fruit. So Jesus is the vine, but now you've got the Father. It's a 1-2 deal. Like Jesus is supplying, but the Father is guiding. Jesus has given you everything that you need for life and godliness to grow and to find destiny, to find purpose, to find meaning in this life. But as you're growing, you've got the Creator who is leading and guiding and pruning those areas of your life that are leading you in the wrong direction. And here's the reality of life. None of us like to be pruned. I love it. People will say to me, oh, Pastor Ben, if you see me screwing up, you just tell me. I can take it. I want to know. And then I tell them and they leave the church. I'm like, what the heck? You told me? You gave me permission and you couldn't take the heat. And I'm a nice guy. I'm like, listen, man, you know, like if I could maybe make a suggestion. We all say we want to be pruned till the shears come out. And then we're like, whoa. It's like my dad used to spank me growing up, and if you've never had to go choose your own switch, Come on, so I was watching a sitcom the other day. This girl had to choose her own switch. If you bring too small a switch back, you had to go back and get another one that was more appropriately sized. You got 2 spankings. When my dad used to spank me, it was like this round and about thing. And he'd have us by one hand and a switch in the other. And you're like, no, don't, Daddy. And that's what happens to our lives when God's trying to prune us and direct us. Man, it is crazy. I watch it all the time. I see it. As a pastor, I sense it. I know it. I watch it. I see God just getting ready just to guide somebody. And, man, they just extricate, just eject right out of the whole situation. Gone. Man, you got to let the Father direct you. And that direction, that pruning, sometimes has some pain. And sometimes we fail to bear real fruit, real meaning in our lives because we refuse the pain of pruning. But gosh almighty, the pruning is what produces the fruit because it takes all of the things in your life that are distracting you from the purpose, that are sucking the resources out of the direction that is determined for you. He snips those things away so that you're going in the most true direction. And those little snips are painful, but they produce the most fruit in your life. That's why you need to have people in your life that can speak into you, that are solid. They're further ahead down the road in their relationship with God. It's why you need to be in small groups. Listen, I don't get paid by the person that shows up to small groups, just so you all know. So I don't pitch this stuff because I'm like, you, I'm going on vacation. That is not how this thing works. So I don't pitch small groups so that I get a bonus. I pitch small groups because you need people in your life that are there as the pruning shears of the Creator to help give you direction and guidance and help you to snip away the things of life that are sucking your resources away from the purpose and destiny and meaning that God created you for. You need that. The pain of pruning always precedes the prize of promotion. The fruit always comes after the pruning happens. Because when the pruning happens, the resources, the source of the vine, are now able to be directed to the fruiting body. And instead of producing leaves and other vines and other straggling things in your life, all of those resources now go to fruit production, which is purpose. It's destiny. In John 15, verse 12, down a little bit in the parable, Jesus is kind of wrapping this thing up, and he says this. He said, "This is my commandment. Out of all of this is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. And greater love has no one than this, than that they lay down their life for his friends." Our meaning in life has to have a redemptive purpose that serves others, that goes beyond us. If all you're building is just for you, you are going to find that it doesn't satisfy your soul. A lot of people built a lot of stuff, a lot bigger than you have, and are still lost. We find meaning when we're connected to God. And we find meaning when we develop a redemptive perspective on life, meaning that when God prunes you, it's for a redemptive purpose. And then we find meaning in a redemptive purpose that includes serving in some way another person. And I am not pitching for you to serve at church. I want you to. I want you to find purpose and make a difference here. That's not what I'm here to tell. I really want you to find purpose, if I can get you to find what God created you to do, and you begin to serve your family in the way that he created you to serve, or you begin to serve in your business world the way he created you to influence that, or you begin to serve as a doctor or a lawyer, or whatever it is that you spend if I can get you to connect to the vine, and you're doing your purpose, then you'll come here and you'll make a difference here. I'm not worried about that. So I'm not pitching. I really want you to connect to the vine, because that's where you find meaning. And so much of that, Jesus says, this is my commandment. I'm summing this up. Be connected to the vine. Let the Father prune you. Understand that pruning has a redemptive purpose. And then make sure that what you're doing is helping other people. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, than that someone lay down their life for their friends. You know, we see this in Jesus. For this purpose, the Son of Man was manifest, that he would destroy the work of the devil, the things that eat away at your fruit. It was his purpose. His purpose was not just so he could be the greatest Messiah ever. His purpose was you. His meaning and purpose was not just for him. They were not sitting in heaven talking back and forth, being like, man, this thing really got away from us. He wasn't just trying to fix the broken world. His purpose was you. And it is the model that our purpose has to have a component that impacts other people. Because if your purpose only impacts you, eventually it'll feel self-seeking. It'll feel self-serving. And when your purpose impacts other people and you give. Do you ever notice that the plant doesn't eat its own fruit? I have never seen a grapevine just consume its own grapes. Never takes them back. Did not produce the grapes for itself. Produce the grapes for someone else. Oh, I wish I could preach this to you. There's so much that God wants to produce for you that impacts the people around you, your own kids, your spouse, your friends, your family, your coworkers, the world. Guys, why else do we exist if not to impact other people? Verse 16. Jesus says this, you did not choose me, but I chose you. And I appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you. God chose you for a purpose. Specifically, there's something that God created you to do that nobody else on planet Earth can do except you. And you will find the satisfaction that your soul desperately looks for when you uncover what that meaning is, what that purpose is. God chose you for it.